Okay, welcome to Plenary Session 3, Transforming Education for Transformative Learning. Well, this is the last panel of the day, and after this, you will have dinner. There's one announcement before we start the session. As you may already know by now, if you have any questions or comments, please write down them in the paper on your table and pass it to the staff. Now, let me start the session. First, I would like to introduce the panel speakers, but as we do have 6 distinguished panelists, I decided to invite them to briefly introduce themselves. I think it's far better than my reading their biographical information for the next 15 minutes. For more detailed information, please check the program book. I will give an example. I'm Kyung-gu Han. I'm trained as a cultural anthropologist, and I have taught at universities for some more than 30 years. Currently, I'm Secretary General of the National Commission for UNESCO in Korea. Okay, your turn.
All right. My name is Michael Boachi Iyadom, and I am currently the Director General at the Institute for Educational Planning and Administration under the auspices of UNESCO, University of Cape Coast, Ghana. I also double as a faculty member at the same institute, and I teach courses related to educational planning, educational leadership, and educational administration. And one of my passionate areas of specialization is educational experiences of underrepresented student populations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, good afternoon. I was already introduced this morning, but I'm Chris Castle. I'm the Director of the Division of Peace and Sustainable Development at UNESCO headquarters in Paris.
I have the opportunity to introduce myself slightly. My name is Karina Menzies-Ballantyne. As I mentioned, I'm from CQ University, Australia. I'm based in a regional town called Bundaberg in Queensland. I'm a teacher educator, but for the university, I co-lead Empower, which is a research cluster that looks at practically oriented, evidence-based research into education for global citizenship, global competence, and sustainable development.
My name is Umair Mushtaq. I'm from Pakistan. I am arts manager and cultural entrepreneur. I run The Little Art, a non-profit arts education organization in Pakistan, which was born in 2007. Just because of my services, recently the government of Pakistan honored me UN SDGs Excellence Award last week. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Berika Shkwagidze. I'm from Georgia, not the United States Georgia, it's the independent country of Georgia. I am the Director of National Center for Teacher Professional Development. This is the agency operating under the Ministry of Education and Science of Georgia. We take care of all the teachers and the principals around the country. Also, we are pioneers of these SDG goals, also framework for competencies of democratic culture. And my passion, other than the football, soccer, is to teach future principals and teachers at one of the state universities in Tbilisi. So that's all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Didi Sukiyadi. I'm the Vice Rector for Academic and Student Affairs of Indonesia University of Education. My background is actually language, so I'm a beginner in global citizenship education. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We have these 6 distinguished panelists, but when I was told that I have to preside over session with 6 panelists, I was terrified. You know, in the last session, you saw there were 3 panelists. But I was relieved to learn that we don't have to actually try to reach a consensus or narrow down discussions or focus on something. This session is devoted to sharing of diverse views, opinions, and suggestions. So with that in mind, you have 5 minutes each in the first round. I think the organization committee prepared 4 questions. So in the first round, you will answer 3 questions, which is, why do we need transformative education? And what does it require or entail? And how are we succeeding and or failing to bring a meaningful transformation into education and or through education? These are 3 questions you will answer in the first round, 5 minutes, starting with Dr. Boache Iadom. And the second round will start from my left. You are extreme right in the reverse order. And the second round question will be, what would be the main contribution of GC, Global Citizenship Education, to transforming education and to transformative education, and what needs to be done further? Okay? So you have 5 minutes to answer the first 3 questions. And when that's over, you have 3 minutes to answer the last question. Is that clear? Okay, then we'll start. Please.
All right, thank you very much. I will try and get it done in 5 minutes. So I will begin with Ghana's cultural indigenous knowledge. Ghana as a country, and I believe many African countries, value our culture. And I'll pick just one example from our indigenous knowledge. There is this popular saying and belief in Ghana that the chief's words are final. So when the chief speaks, no one else speaks. Now, this has changed culturally to when a child learns how to wash his or her hands well, he or she is allowed to dine with the elders. So from a cultural point of when the chief speaks, you can't even question. And you can't even make a comment because that is final. He's a chief. To where once you know how to wash your hands well, if you understand the context, you can sit on the same table with the chiefs or the elders and then question them. So culturally, we've gone through many transformations. And from the cultural context to education, we are seeing many more transformations. So the first justification for me why we need transformative education is that even our culture is going through transformation. And then, as a committed member of the international community, and I'm referring to Ghana and many other African countries, and I'll limit myself to ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, the African Union, UNESCO, and the United Nations. And within this context, we have a responsibility to transform learning. And I'll again pick a few examples. If you look at the SDG 4, of course, there is focus on transformative learning. If you look at Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development, a plan for action for people, planet, and prosperity, there is room for transformative education. UNESCO's Future of Education Initiative, Reimagining Education, transformative learning is there. Agenda 2063, Africa, the Africa we want, 2013 to 2063. There is transformative learning in there. And then Ghana's Education Sector Plan, 2018 to 2030, we are required to transform learning. And then just last year, September 2022, Transform Education Summit, I happened to be Ghana's national convener. And the summit itself, mobilizing action, ambition, solidarity, and solutions to recover pandemic-related learning losses and sow the seeds to transform education in a rapidly changing world. That is also transformative learning. And then, as follow-up to last year's Transforming Education Summit, countries made commitments, national commitments, and we are required to make sure that we fulfill these requirements. There are a lot of transformative learning agenda in that commitment statement that we made last year as a country, and we are working so hard to make sure that we stay glued to these commitments. And then last month, the United Nations SDGs Summit, 18-19 September, that was also some emphasis on transformative learning. And then the African Union has declared 2024 as a year of education. There's an element of transformative learning. And then just a few weeks ago, when the world celebrated teachers, the World Teachers Day, the theme, the teacher we need for the education we want, there is also an element of transformative learning there. So there is every justification that we all need to work together and stay committed to transforming education in Ghana and also in many African countries. And to conclude, the Ministry of Education in Ghana, with its agencies, and I'll mention just three. NACA is the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment. There are ongoing curriculum review, especially the pre-tertiary level, to make sure that there is focus on transformative learning. The Ghana Education Service is doing the same. National Teaching Council is doing the same, making sure that we develop teachers who understand issues of global citizenship and can also drive the transformative learning agenda. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your efforts and achievement in Ghana. Well, next, we'll ask Mr. Christopher Kessel.
Thank you, Chair. I think already today we've heard so many different examples of why we need transformative education. And all of them have been valid and persuasive in terms of what I was hearing. But I guess I want to draw us back to the basic issue of just we need to transform education because we need to be able to achieve SDG 4. We need to make sure that all learners have access to a good quality education. And then specifically, of course, a number of speakers earlier today made reference to Target 4.7, and I think that really speaks specifically to global citizenship education. For us at UNESCO, one of the things that we were, which has come up so strongly in the Transformative Education Summit, and also in terms of our work to support countries to move forward with global citizenship education, is to understand that education is transformative when learners learn what they need to learn to make the world a better place for themselves, their communities, societies, and for the world. And transformative learning is therefore learning that equips learners with the knowledge, values, and abilities to act for the betterment of all people in the planet. And I'm really, by the way, delighted to hear all the references to climate change education that have come up today, as responsible citizens of a global community. So those are just some thoughts on transformative education and learning. We know that education can help all of us connect with the world, and it exposes us to new possibilities and forms of thinking, strengthens our capacities for dialogue, to imagine, co-create, and to act. However, the question is, what do we need to transform in education so that education becomes transformative? So I want to just share 4 premises with you in terms of, I guess you could call them almost key ingredients that are important for transforming education. The first is that we need to continue to build education on the guiding principles that underpin human rights. And again, we've heard a number of speakers remind us of that. These principles need to include things like the right to the essential right to a quality education throughout life, inclusion, equity, cooperation, and solidarity, among others, and that are reflected in the revised text. And again, thanks to all the speakers who mentioned the revised 1974 recommendation, which concerns education for international understanding, cooperation, and peace, and education relating to human rights and fundamental freedoms. And hopefully, all of our UNESCO member states will formally adopt this revised 1974 recommendation next month at our General Conference. The second premise is that the purpose and goals of education are to contribute to build a more socially inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable world. And again, it was referenced earlier, the UNESCO 2021 report, Reimagining Our Futures Together, a new social contract for education. And again, the soon to be adopted 1974 recommendation provide us with a fresh review of the purpose and shared vision of education. So these are two really key references for us that we think are important. The third premise is that transforming education needs to be taken in a holistic and comprehensive manner. Changes to specific parts or components of the education system in and of themselves won't lead to the kind of transformation that we need. So a holistic education system approach, tying it to the broader social, political, and economic context is critical. And then finally, we need to engage all actors, educators, families, communities, students, ministry staff, and partners in our transformation efforts. I heard a number of people talk about the whole school approach. I think that would be a good way of summing it up. And we think about the whole school approach so many times when we're trying to sort of really achieve a transformation or a change in education. So I would point to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights. Well, in a sense, it's a very beautiful summary of the Reimagining Our Future Together report. Thank you very much. Next. Yeah.
Thank you. Why do we need it? We need transformational education because the only constant is change. And the only thing that has changed about change in the last few decades is it is becoming more rapid and more complex. And we need young people, we need adults, we need all learners to be resilient and adaptable. In the Australian Goals for Education, we talk about active and informed members of our local and global communities. So transformative education needs to develop independent, critical and creative thinkers who are capable of and motivated to see past the clickbaits and have informed discussions and to act on some of the wicked problems that we are facing. So what does this entail? Active and informed requires education that motivates and inspires, whether it's through empathy or other means. We need to move away from teaching content. We need to use that content to teach conceptual understanding, to teach cognitive skills, social emotional skills, to build the types of values and attitudes that promote that community-minded child. The way we need to do this is, as Director Russ pointed out, is connecting that knowledge to the real world. And we know that a lot of students now are just getting through school so that they can get on with the real world. And there is this huge divide between the two. We need to bring that real world back into the classroom, and that's part of transforming education. Where are we succeeding or failing? Well, there's pockets of excellence everywhere. In classrooms, in university classrooms, there are passionate teachers, there are passionate lecturers, but we need to move away from this charismatic leader model because that teacher moves on, that lecturer moves on. We need actually to institutionalize that charisma, if you like, so that it becomes systemic, whether it's whole school or through a whole department or through a whole country. We also need to get rid of, which is my pet hate, so I apologise for the soapbox, we need to get rid of the either-or mentality. Either we get back to basics and do literacy and numeracy, or we do stuff like education for global citizenship. To me, That mentality has entrenched disadvantage for decades, because who gets the best back to basics rhetoric? The low socioeconomic, the disadvantaged schools and students. So they are the ones that are missing out on building the competencies that allow them to break the poverty of cycle. So we need to ensure that the type of education we're talking about, the equity and excellence that we're talking about through SDG 4, filters through and gets past that either or. The other either or mentality that bugs me is it's either national pride or global citizenship. You can have both. This type of education values diversity. It asks you to look at self. It asks you to come from your own values, your own culture, your own basis, and then embrace and understand and have empathy for the others. So it's not that we have to be either nationalistic or global citizens. We can easily do both, and the cosmopolitan mentality addresses that. We also need to look at the way we're training teachers and the freedom and the mandates we give those teachers. We have huge issues around teacher shortage and teacher attrition. We need to let them experiment. We need to let them fail sometimes in order to transform. And last but not least, the point that Professor Essa brought up earlier, we need to look at assessment. In our research, the biggest blocker to implementing this type of transformative education is, yes, but I have to teach to the test. Yes, but I have to get through this standardised assessment. Yes, but I have to get my students to university. Until we push past that mentality and move towards the sorts of assessment that the professor was speaking about, where we're measuring outputs and formative development and not just a number or a letter on a page in order to go to the next level of education or make the school look good, then we're going to have problems transforming education. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm fascinated. I completely agree with you, but I will ask you your question later. You mentioned that emphasized the need to get rid of this either-or mentality. Well, from a person who actually taught for more than 30 years in different settings, well, I would like to ask you whether this is a mentality problem or it's a real problem. We try to get over this, but it comes again and again. But as a presider, I will not be argumentative, and I will ask the question if there is time. Okay, so we'll move on.
Thank you. The question why we need transformative education is like, to answer it, a joke comes into my mind is like, why does it, I'm talking about my region, why does Pakistan need transformative education? Well, our education system should be as adaptable as a Pakistani's taste buds. Ready to handle spicy problems, sweet solutions, and everything in between. So that's the answer. And to answer like why we need it, while working at the grassroots level in Pakistan and working with the universities and schools, we have experienced that people does not know what the GCED, they ask about it. So we need to educate, we need to advocate more. Among many things, like why transformative education is essential in Pakistan, I just like quickly highlight three major things. One, holistic development. Transformative education fosters holistic personal development, addressing socioeconomic disparities, and promoting critical thinking that actually empowers a marginalized community and the other communities. So global perspective, it equips students with a global perspective and cultural awareness, so promoting tolerance and a sense of global citizenship. Third, why we need is sustainable future. because the transformative education emphasis on the essential for addressing environmental challenges and contributing to a better future. To answer what does it require, among many things, like I would focus on 4 things. Continuous evaluation and adaptation. The education system should be continuously evaluated and adapted to ensure it remains responsive to the evolving needs of society and global landscape. Second, public awareness and advocacy. Raising public awareness about the importance of transformative education and advocating for its implementation is crucial to garner the support and resources. Third is policy reforms. Enact policies that revise curricula, promote gender equity, and integrate arts and technology. I'm specifically talking about in our region what we are facing and how it should be. And the fourth one, teacher training. It should be extensive one. Developing comprehensive teacher training programs for innovative pedagogy, global perspectives, and cultural sensitivity. How we are succeeding and the challenges. So through my work, we have been working in Pakistan from 2007 and many other organizations and working and doing efforts in that space. I would specifically talk about numbers, how we reached and how many people we have reached, which we consider our success. In 16 years, we have done 81 large-scale events and festivals in Pakistan. We have reached 9 million, more than 9 million children and youth who attended our programs. We have reached 5,600 schools who participated in our programs and workshops. We have conducted 6,130 workshops with teachers, children, and youth in Pakistan in the past 16 years. So, success, what we did is promotion of arts in education. Yes. Success, it increased school enrollment and bridged the gender gap, and our efforts to modernize the curriculum. We worked with the government on that. Challenges we faced, quality of education, because in the formal curricula, there is we sense and we feel there is not much integration of arts, which actually empowers and which actually gives the creative space for children and young people to work on that and empower themselves. Yes, and third and last one, inadequate teacher training, which we faced are ongoing challenges because it's very crucial, which we experienced, and it should be at the higher level to look at it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Congratulations on your achievement and also admiration for what you have done. Okay, next we will move to Mr. Berika Shukakis. Yes.
Thank you. When you ask this question and then shared with us, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. If you turn CNN on or any international news channel, you see that what's going on in the world. You don't need any other things to think about. That what's going on in the world. This is because we lack responsibility as human beings. Dr. Valentine, raised the question that are we global citizens or are we nationalists? We just have to answer this very simple, with a very simple answer. We have to just be human beings. And then what's going on in the world now? Sometimes you think that we as human beings, we do not act as human beings. The sense of, when it comes to my region, I think that Dr. Rus and me and Natia, we represent former Soviet Union bloc. And when we talk about why we need to learn more about transformative education, we ask the question, we have to ask this question to ourselves, why we need, what we are going to transform. We came from 70 years of Soviet regime, and then we have to transform first our mental state and then the Homo Sovieticus mind, what we have still have, unfortunately. And most of our teachers, we are educated and raised during the Soviet regime. So we have a lot to transform. We have a lot to teach. And then my attitude is that when I talk to my colleagues, is that it's very hard to recreate or raise my mom, physics teacher, who is 74 years old. But I'm more optimistic to raise my son or daughter and then to help my mom to change her own behavior. Because she still teaches the same way she used to teach. You know, the physics teachers, they are very tough people. When it comes to changing agents, I think that the students are the better changing agents who can help, who can transform their mindset, and also to help households to behave more democratic way. When we talk about, when you go to UNESCO webpage, it says that to help students to raise responsible and active citizens. I think that, and then my colleagues at my office, we think that responsibility is the crucial thing to help students be more active citizens and more responsible citizens and global citizens at the end of the day. And then because responsibility comes, after responsibility, then comes the power. And then no government, no regime can occupy your mind when you are responsible and strong household and a citizen. So what we do now is that to help kids develop STEM projects, different type of projects, and then through working ethics, empowering them to be independent citizens, they will be responsible citizens as well. Because just talking, by preaching, you cannot succeed, especially in my part of the world. So we are educating teachers, we are educating principals. SDG goals are responsibility of every governmental institution in the country. But still, I'm strongly believe that only by talking and preaching, you cannot reach the goal. By doing, by research, by, like the educators know what I'm talking about, you are empowering students to be responsible citizens and then just to be human beings and respect others, other cultures, and then other, the age group or the gender. We won't have those type of issues if you are a hardworking man and woman on the field. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your views. Finally, Dr. Didi Sukiadi.
Okay, thank you. In my perspective, at least there are two backgrounds that make transformative education needed at the moment. First of all, we see the increasing interdependency among countries in the world. And the second one, we see that there are still some disparities among countries in the world between North and South, between East and West, that sometimes will create tensions and make the problems that we are facing more complicated. And I agree with my colleague Berha that we are human beings. We are the only creature in the world that have brain, mind, and also imagination. So we cannot rely the job of planning our future to other creatures, animals, or extraterrestrial creature. Yeah. So it is our responsibility to draft our own future, whether it will go to something good or will go to something bad. And we believe that the preparation of having individuals who have ability in overcoming the present and complex problems is through what we call transformative learning. Transformative learning, in every effort we are doing to nurture this trait, at least require someone who is able to create new values, who is able to reconcile between tension and dilemma, and someone who can take action. And in our experience, transformative education is underway in Indonesia through the policy that we call as independent learning. Through this policy at university level, all university students are required to study 1 semester outside the university walls through some activities like internship, entrepreneurships, community engagement, teaching assistant, a research project, independent study, and student exchanges. And at the faculty side, we are encouraged to adopt more learner-centered teaching approaches, such as using case method and case method. In our university at the moment, we are applying the principles of global citizenship education in one subject that we call civic education. This subject should be attended by all university students in Indonesia, not only in our university. And we are using project-based approach in this matter. And at the beginning, we are trying to identify the problems. And then the problems can be about global issues like poverty, gender bias, the migrant issue, refugee issue, and also, for example, global health, and also other global problems that we are facing at the moment. And after problem identification, the next step is choosing problems. And here they decide their own problems that they are interested in. And after that, they are required to gather information, whether from the field, for example, by interviewing source persons, or by reading, or by doing a small-scale research. And then they are developing portfolios, whether in the form of flyers, whether in the form of news, whether in the form of video or short movies. And the next one, they are challenged to showcase their portfolios. It is done whether in the form of online or offline. By showing their portfolio, they will be able to express what they have been experiencing in the previous stages. And after that, they are doing the reflection. It is to reflect on what they have been doing and to plan the future activities. In terms of what we call student exchanges, we also require the students to mix with our community to learn not only inside campus, but also outside the campus. And this will create positive feedback to them in terms of cultural understanding. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us what the Indonesian government started. I think it's extremely important to give students the chance to walk outside the campus while attending school, because that will give them the kind of sense extremely necessary for future work when they become high-ranking government officials or businessmen or the NGO leaders. Well, thank you very much. Meanwhile, we have these questions. Can you read the questions over there? Yeah, there is a question which says, to any speaker who wants to respond. So you are asked to volunteer. Question one is, many societies are still struggling with basic literacy and modernization of education. Well, this is the current situation. So in this situation, what does transformative education or global citizenship education mean to these societies, these struggling societies, and why do they still need it? And the follow-up question is, in what sense is transformative education or global citizenship education beneficial to these societies and their education when they have to tackle basic problems? Well, I think these questions are directly related with what Dr. Valentine mentioned, the need to go beyond this mentality. So I will ask you to respond first, and then I will ask any other panelists to go on. Okay.
Thank you. In my answer, I'd like to draw on some advice that I got from Kartikeya Sarabhai, who's the founder director of the Center for Environment Education in India. And some years ago, we were talking about the progress of India in terms of sustainable development. And he was showing me a graph that it was like basically the developed countries were going completely the wrong way and were being completely unsustainable. And he showed me another graph that says, here's what India needs to do. Not follow that path and develop up, but learn from those mistakes and jump over to the sustainable bit that these countries are now trying to go back to. So my answer to that question is, if you are developing a modernized version, for the want of a better term, within a particular country and dealing with basic issues, why not design it right from the ground up and start with equity and excellence, education for global citizenship, and address these basic needs through that lens?
Well, thank you very much. Would you like to respond to? Yes.
Yeah, so the second question, societies struggling with basic literacy and modernization, in what? Yes, so what does global citizenship education mean to such societies who are still struggling with the basic literacy and modernization? We believe that through global citizenship education and through the promotion of transformative learning, what they don't have, what they are lacking, the gaps in literacy, numeracy, and all that could be addressed. So Ghana has the Complementary Education Agency within the Ministry of Education. And what that agency does is to support out-of-school children. And a high percentage of out-of-school children in Ghana have never been to school. So in terms of literacy, numeracy, they don't have it. But what the agency does is to support them with basic skills through global citizenship education. And we are realizing that some of these kids are going back to school. So the Complementary Education Agency will encourage them and get some of them back to school. Those who can't even go back to school are supported with some skill training. So my point is that even though they might be struggling with basic literacy, through global citizenship education and other forms of support, it gets better. They end up becoming, for lack of a better term, better citizens, better Ghanaians, and better Africans. At the end of the day, even if they can't read and write, and they are better citizens, they become better citizens, they promote peace in their communities, they promote support for each other in their communities. It is solving part of the problem. So I guess my point is we shouldn't wait till they get the literacy and numeracy that they don't have before we introduce them to global citizenship. They must go together. As we try to resolve the literacy problems, we must at the same time integrate global citizenship education. And the goal is to get them to become better citizens in their various communities and societies. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is one of the real heart of the matter, where this actually had something to do with the Korean experience too. Well, when Korea economy developed and grew, and we joined the OECD and et cetera, some people began to argue that well, Korea became successful because it had an authoritarian regime. So with President Park Chung-hee, he kept the people silent and devoted all the energy in economic development. So economic growth first and democracy. But there are others who criticized this view because, well, which country did not want to develop economically? They all wanted to develop, but they failed. It's not because President Park Chung-hee was successful in repression, but it was because Korean people were very active. They demanded social justice and democracy. So although he repressed freedom of speech and civil liberty a little bit, Korea was, relatively speaking, a very democratic country. So I think my personal view is that Korean experience really shows why to becoming better citizens is necessary. It's fundamentally important for economic growth and other social development. Well, so much for that. I'm the presider, so I should not be talking too much. And now I see a question for Dr. Didi Sukiadi. So before we go to this question, are there any panelists who wants to address the first question? No, then I will go to Dr. Didi Sukiadi. Please show the question.
I cannot read the question.
Yeah, could you please show the question? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I will come here. I do not wear my glasses.
Of course.
From an Indonesian teacher question, my question is, what program will be applied to improve teachers' ability to apply student-centered learning in Indonesia? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is from an Indonesian teacher to vice rector in Indonesia.
Okay.
Okay.
There are some programs that will be done by our government to apply learner-centered in our classroom. What I know well is at the university level. At university level, in the past, we tended to use lecturing in front of the class. The professor is giving speech and the children are listening. And at the moment, at the university level, the government has required university teaching and learning processes should be done through what we call project-based and case method. And this will be assessed by the government. How many percent of the subject in university which are applying case method or project-based approaches. If there are more subjects using those two approaches, and then the key performance indicators of the university will be higher. On the other way, if it is smaller, and then also the key performance indicator in the area will be lower. So it is a kind of a carrot and stick policy to encourage university lecturers to use learner-centered approach. Of course, learner-centered approach is not an issue, it's not a present issue, it's not a new issue. We are dealing this for so many times, but now because we are facing more complicated problems that have been mentioned before, the government encourage not only at the level of primary, secondary, but at the level of university to use what we call project-based and case method approach. Thank you.
Okay, since Dr. Sukiadi had floor, I think it's time to start the second round. The second round will start in the reverse order. So please, Dr. Sukiadi.
Okay, thank you. In my understanding, global citizenship education is needed because there are one key. The one key to global citizenship education is autonomous thinkers. So in this complex universe, we need individuals who are not only able to receive knowledge and acquire skills, but we need individuals who are able to think for themselves. And this can be done through global citizenship education, because global citizenship education adds global perspective on what we call transformative learning. So global citizenship education will fit to what we call transformative learning. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now it's next is Mr. Berika Sukakis. I read in your bio that you are extremely interested in football.
Yes.
Yeah, soccer. I'm very glad to read that because I was asked by AFCEU some 15 years ago to develop a textbook, teaching material for primary school students. And we are about to have this World Cup game. So I made a teaching material, a book, based on football, or soccer. So, you know, because many teachers complained that education for international understanding or global citizenship education is very new to them. They are not familiar with global issues, etc., etc. So I tried to show the teachers that you can actually start with everyday life. Right? Well, children play football, and with the football you can talk about globalization, intercultural communication and cultural diversity. You can talk about gender roles. You can talk about environment and sustainable development. You can talk about human rights, everything. And also peace, you know, in football games. All these terms are from war. You have offense, defense, strategy. But it's for peace too. So I'm very glad. Okay, go ahead.
I was thinking that our moderator was very funny and then was leading because he has some relations with football, because people who are related to football are funny people, and they have very good examples, so I have no doubts anymore. Speaking of football, you rightly mentioned that we have to use so-called La Masia tactics of Barcelona, that we are keep attacking from different standpoints to this issue. We have to tackle this issue from different standpoint, because we definitely need this global citizenship to be in our schools. The research shows that only every human after 10 years of graduating the school remembers only 3% of the subject knowledge, not more. But what we are left the school, but what we need mostly when we graduate the school is the skills. Lifelong, to be independent learners, to be independent people, and then we need the values. We need those things that we operate as humans the rest of our life. So global citizenship education is focusing on those skills and values that we need the most when we grow up, when we are out of the school, and then we behave as responsible humans. Back to the football, as I said, that global SDG goals, most of the clubs now are required to comply with SDG goals, and then to help academic football players or the grown-ups to spend responsibly all the resources they have, and to help others. You know, there's only in football we have fair play. There is no rules, but there are rules. So when your opponent is down, you go and then shake hand and ask them and help, and then throw the ball outside. So we have to teach our kids more how to take care of the others. And our household is not our world. The world is way bigger than our classroom, our household, our school, our small city. It's global. And then we humans. And the final one, we have one of Georgian writers, Natia may remember him well. He says that every human in the world sees the same dreams. So we are the same people. We share the same things, same values and stuff. So we have to preach it more. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next.
As Ms. Berika talked about dreams, tomorrow, my tomorrow session is about dreams, and then how we are working with dreams using arts mediums, because what we say is we work with children and youth, and we let them celebrate their dreams. And then that's how we connect with the audience, with the community, and then how we talk about GCED with them. I would like to share a story, like how I got to know about GCED. It was back in 2017 when UNESCO Pakistan and UNESCO FCU did a workshop, and then from where I got to know the GCED, and then the competencies, and then how we can work on that. So it's been 6 years. We are still facing the question in our society, from the universities and the schools and from the teachers, that what is GCED? So it's the very basic question. And then what I think is, like, that's where we feel that there is a lot more needs to be done in the society at different levels. And so what I see is, like, how and what it needs to be done in future, and in our space and culture. It's like, what I feel is policy implementation. Again, maybe I'm repeating it, but yes, policy implementation is very important, because many organizations working at the different levels in their own capacities, but we need to work on one center goal from the governments, from the local governments, and at the grassroots level organizations and CSOs. Second is we need to, it's equitable access. We need to prioritize access to quality education in underserved areas and addressing socioeconomic disparities in Pakistan. Yes, the levels actually stops us to access the knowledge, access to the quality education. Third is what needs to be done is we need more community engagements, and that's where we see that arts play a very vital role in that, engaging the communities, where they feel, where they feel more connected with you, and talks about the very certain or very high level issues. Fourth, the last one is integration of arts in education. That needs to be also done to see a better future, and then how we can work on that together. As this morning, Ms. Dolan and Ms. Keir mentioned, that empathy is the center point. And so if we look at it, we have experienced that empathy throughout our all programs. Arts opens you to work on empathy, to learn it, and to empower yourself. So we believe that art should be at the center point at every level, so we see the change in coming future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Umair Mushtaq. And now, Dr. Karina Menzies-Ballantyne. Yeah.
Thank you. So what's the main contribution that GCED can make? I feel like a lot of these have been covered, so I just want to touch on them briefly. Firstly, GCED's not a subject or an add-on. It's a systemic changing of mindsets, of teachers, of students, of the community. If you change those mindsets, you can change the world. It doesn't seek conformity, it embraces and celebrates diversity. And as we heard earlier, it's reflective. It starts with self, and with a strong sense of self and who am I, then I can engage, empathize, and work with others. And the main point I want to make in what needs to come next and where do we go from here is that, picking up on the point that Professor Lee was making earlier, we can't just adapt something and put it into our context. GCED can and must be contextualized, and this takes time. I'm just holding up a little example here, and it was only signed off by the Director General of Education last week, so we're very proud of this. And this took the PISA Global Competence Framework. We worked with 22 schools, 3 representatives from each school for 3 years to say, yes, but what does that look like in a Queensland school? What does that look like for a school that's beginning, developing, or leading in this space? Very happy to talk to anybody about this afterwards. I was a critical friend on this project over the last 3 years. So where do we get this balance between contextualizing and the sense of urgency that Mr. Lim talked about? One of the ways that we do this, and I think you've picked up, Amara, very well on this, is by making policy or a declaration, for example. And I use here the example of the Dublin Declaration. It's just a piece of paper, like the 1974 recommendations. They're just a piece of paper. But the process of discussing it, the process of implementing it, puts GCED on the forefront. Ministers of Education, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, heads of states signed off on these documents. They were discussed intimately across the member countries, and now the Dublin Declaration, for example, looks very different in different countries across Europe, but the prioritisation came from that piece of paper. And my colleague Libby and I are very keen to start a discussion. As we know, Mr. Lim, we're looking to do a similar process here in the Asia-Pacific region, and we're very keen to talk to anybody who is interested in that conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Kessel, yes.
Thank you very much. So many great points have been made. I'm going to circle back to I think, some interesting approaches or tools that have come up. Sports, we talked about, and arts, and in particular, link those to pedagogies. How do we learn? And I think those are two really good examples. And one of the specific things I wanted to sort of highlight is some of you may be aware that UNESCO is in the process of finalizing a new framework for culture and arts education. And I think that's particularly exciting because it's being done through, of course, an inclusive and participatory process, working with our member states and lots of different stakeholders. But the idea really is that I think we all acknowledge that we're missing opportunities by not incorporating more arts and culture in our education systems and approaches. And so this, I think, and particularly delighted to have Omer here on the panel sharing his experiences in particular, but it means everything from considering museums and cultural heritage sites as places of learning, getting out of the classroom and sort of experiencing arts and culture as a way of learning and linking that back to global citizenship education in particular. Beyond pedagogies, I think the point around curriculum that I'd like to make, again, the acquisition of not, of course, just knowledge, but skills, values, so happy to hear that referenced many times today, and competencies to enable learners to build the world that we envisage. And one example that I wanted to share in particular, some of you may be aware that since 1964, like that was when I was born even, that's a long time ago, UNESCO has been supporting a project around the general history of Africa, and some of you may be aware of that. But it's interesting because the idea really is to try and respond to the challenge of reconstructing Africa's history, freeing it from the racial prejudices ensuing from the slave trade and colonization, and promoting a genuine and owned African perspective. And I think that for us, the general history of Africa opens up enormous opportunities for, as you say, building this mindset around global citizenship education as well. So that was just one example that I wanted to share, because I think it's exciting that the general history of Africa process is now moving into more of a phase of finding and developing tools that can support member states to actually implement it and reflect it in curricula. Teachers, lots of people have talked about teachers as a critically important center for the transformation that we're talking about, and recognizing this. Just want to acknowledge, which so many of us I think have stressed throughout the day, the importance of teachers' development and autonomy, enabling their participation in public debate on education and the design of policies and programs. In that regard, also we've just published a guide at UNESCO that seeks to assist teachers from Africa in preparing and designing lessons about atrocity crimes, including genocide. So Rwanda, for example, comes to mind. And the complex histories that need to be navigated in classroom discussions, and I think we can all see the obvious connections to GCED for that. And then finally, schools themselves remain this critical, essential educational setting. I'm going to get to non-formal and informal in a minute, but schools themselves are still really critical. And above all, to succeed in promoting the transformation that we're talking about, we need to also make sure that schools are safe places to learn. And unfortunately, that's too often still not the case. There's still lots of violence and bullying that occurs in schools, as well as other forms of violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, school-related gender-based violence. And until we address that and make sure that schools are safe places and supportive places for learners to learn, we're going to have challenges in terms of realizing our aspirations when it comes to global citizenship education. We have a recent publication in particular on addressing hate speech through education. And if you haven't seen that or become familiar with that, please let me know and I'll be happy to talk about that. And then finally, just to acknowledge the non-formal and informal education, I'm so happy to hear the acknowledgement of lifelong learning as a critical part of what certainly we at UNESCO, and I know some of our member states also embrace, which is that learning needs to happen throughout life, not just in informal education. So those are just a few reflections, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, finally.
All right. Yes, so finally, I began and I am ending. Yes, so it appears we are doing pretty well with global citizenship education within the school system. But I believe we need to intentionally extend this conversation at the family level, at the community level as well. So that, because we know that learning happens outside the classroom, and global citizenship education competences are also developed outside the classroom. So at the family level, for instance, what is the conversation on the table? What have you done today for someone else? I mean, if kids come back from school and we are having dinner, were you able to support anybody in school, on your way to school, on your way back? So that we intentionally engage families to have conversations about how to develop ourselves to become more peaceful as a family. Then we extend it. Africa, for instance, we believe strongly in communal living. So through communal living, how are we having this conversation at that level? But more specifically, the ultimate goal of global citizenship education is peaceful coexistence with each other. And peaceful coexistence with each other must begin at the personal level. Once I get it at the personal level, it's easy to move it on to the next levels. Then we also intentionally attempt to move away from individual visions to shared visions. So even at the family level, at the school level, in various sectors of the economy, business, religion, education, politics, how do we translate one's personal vision to shared vision so that we all embrace it and move away from I to we? And again, many African countries love the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because you are. This is traditional to many African countries. So again, if we begin to promote some of these traditional philosophies, we are getting closer to benefiting for global citizenship education. Sometimes we make it look too big and too high at the topmost level without breaking it down to the very local level, family, communities, and all that. And then finally, we also have to have the conversation on the table, again, at the family level, about how to manage emotions. Because if we learn how to manage emotions at the individual level, and we extend this to the family level, community level, various levels of the community, then we are getting closer to achieving global peace. Because most of the problems that we are having move around one person's inability to manage emotions and all that. And finally, this has been said already, let us continuously promote empathy within education. Let us promote values-driven education, and I believe that together we can make it. It is possible, and together we can make it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, the global is also in the family we can find. And listening to Mr. Kessler's mention of this, the African History Project of UNESCO, which are huge volumes, I'm very ashamed to say that we tried to translate it into Korean several times, but we failed. We couldn't get the funding. But I will try again because we are the Koreans. I think it's not only Koreans, but we are so ignorant about other cultures, other people. We know something about the United States, UK, France, Germany, but we are so ignorant about our neighbors and especially Africa. When we are compiling a book on this education for international understanding, my close colleague, well, he's an anthropologist who did his fieldwork in Africa. He suggested putting this episode into the text. Well, he graduated from Seoul National University, a very prestigious one, and went to study to the United States to study at Berkeley, University of California. And Berkeley has an excellent engineering college, so many of the brightest and best Korean students also go to Berkeley. when they heard that my colleague was leaving for Africa to do his fieldwork, they gave him a small, farewell party. And one of these Korean students, he's one of the best students in Korea, he came to him and asked, by the way, where did Tarzan, Tarzan, where did Tarzan live in Africa? Well, that's the miserable state of these are Korean elites, the best and the brightest. Yeah, they are professors at Seoul National University and others. But we are so ignorant about these people. And I think global education, citizenship education is a long way to go. Yeah, by the way, we have several questions. And can you read them, or should I read them for you? Well, I think there was another question about internet. Yeah, please go up. Well, actually, from my memory, I think there was a question. Well, not all the countries are equipped, do not enjoy the infrastructure to access internet. And now it's here. So how can transformative learning initiatives be effectively implemented in a country with limited internet access to promote critical empowerment among its citizens, considering the challenges posed by the lack of online resources and connectivity? Korea is a country where we have extremely good internet service, but not all countries are like that. And sometimes you cannot use internet on school or classroom. So this question was about what can we do in a situation where we have limited internet access. Anybody wants to respond? Yes.
All right, so I come from Ghana, and there are many places in Ghana with limited internet connectivity. What we do is to contextualize global citizenship education. So what works in the UK, or what it means in the UK, what it means in the United States, may be different from what it means in this place in Ghana. At the end of the day, as I said initially, the ultimate goal is to promote world peace through peaceful family systems and peaceful community systems and peaceful national systems. So no internet. It doesn't mean we cannot engage and have the conversation about global citizenship education. Again, if we make it appear that global citizenship education, the word global sometimes could be deceptive. It could mean do whatever everybody is doing globally. But that is not the point. The point is, in your context, how are you promoting peace? Amongst yourself, how are you promoting peace? How do you understand global issues to the extent that you wouldn't make it affect your local area so much? So global peace could mean A, B, and C, but you need that peaceful environment at your local level to be able to speak the language. So I guess my point is, with or without internet, let us engage, let us have the conversation at our level. You may not even get to know what is happening in other places. I mean, if internet is so bad and you are not getting the opportunity to read, but make it happen in your context. And then when internet connectivity gets better, then you can relate with what is happening around the world. So create your own peaceful environment, no matter the conditions, no matter the situations. You can do it in your own context, in your own language, within your own cultural settings. And again, it is possible, it can be done.
Thank you very much. I think this satisfies the question. Okay, can you go to the next question? Also, this next question is addressed not to any specific panelist. Can you move to the next question? Yeah. Move down. down. Yes. Yeah. This is from a Korean teacher. The question is, we often feel uneasy with uncertainty, but we are going through an era of uncertainty. How can we encourage ourselves and younger generation to remain open-minded and constructive under such circumstances of current crisis and uncertainty? Any good specific examples of pedagogy or education project? I cannot read the next, but I think obviously our teacher feels great personal and social crisis. Okay, we have a volunteer. Yeah.
It's been already mentioned here that the teachers are role models of the students, and most of us, especially elementary level, we copied some of our behaviors from our teachers. So it is very hard now to run the class of 35 students. But when the best example the teachers can give to their students is to engage them in the learning process, to have learner-centered classrooms, where the kids are working in their open spaces and then working as like a society. I was introduced to the new model of the Finnish education system when they have open spaces, and the students from the age of the second graders, fifth graders, 10th graders are working together on the projects. So they act like a community, because our traditional schools, unfortunately, do not prepare students for the future life, because there are 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, and then that's the old school model. But if we change the setup of our learning system, what we did in Georgia, that we introduced multidisciplinary projects to 20 pilot schools. We are a second grader, fifth grader, 8th grader, and 10th grader are working together on the same project. Where the students, older students, know how to treat the younger ones, and then the younger ones how to treat the older ones. And then this is a kind of a micro model of the regular society where we act. So if the teachers have a trouble, I don't know about Korea, but in every country I went, the teachers have a problem. They consume more than 70% of the instructional time. From 60 to 70%, it's one teacher is talking all the time, and 30% for 30 kids. And can you imagine that they are not involved in the process? They are left out of educational process. So if the teacher gives the ball to the students, and on the other half of with the students, then he can relax, and then he can moderate the learning process. But the teachers, most of the time, in most of the countries, they think that that will ruin their authority. If the teachers will be, the students will be more engaged in the learning process. But after 6th class, the teachers are drained, they have zero energy. But if you give them ball, and then if you let them play, after 6th class, you will be joyful, you will be full of energy, and what is more, students will be engaged in the learning process. So that would be my suggestion. And it's not from the books. We tried in the practical settings, and then one of the students said after this presenting the project, she said, I did not know that learning process could be so joyful and funny. Then the teacher seemed very, physically in shape after this the project. So that's what we might.
Thank you very much for this wonderful process. And, I think you have another volunteer. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, and then.
Okay. So, well, it's very interestingly, I would like to share one of our project which we did named Equally Loud. It was on the gender-based violence, and we were talking about how the gender discrimination in the society, how we can, talk about it, how we can initiate dialogue in the society using film as a medium. So this was one project. What we did is we worked with the university students, which where in our culture, in our society, it's very difficult for women to talk about sensitive issues, or maybe which are considered the taboos or stereotypes, maybe the periods of the woman, and then how they feel the pain during the pregnancy or something. It's very, you can say, it's just, taboos in the culture. So what we did is like how we can talk about it. So what we did, we engaged them in a conversation where we just said that we are going to make films. That's it. We were not about to talk about anything else. We designed a workshop with them for 15 days where they were just getting through the process to learn how to make films, how to use the equipment, how to use the camera, with the basics. And after like 15 days, we asked a simple question in the classroom that now you know how to make films, on which topic you want to make the film. So that conversation actually led to that place where we received films on women's period. We received films on where male dancing in the public, just as self-expression, because it's in our society, it's different. And we very sensitive topics, female riding a bike in our society, yes, it's there. So we received films on very, very interesting things. And we were amazed to see that when we started to showcase those, with the consent, obviously, we started to showcase those films in the community and with their parents. And we did some public showcases where we involved the politicians and policymakers in that sessions. And they were all amazed to see, oh, okay, so we are talking about some things. So in the similar ways, what I feel is like these topics can definitely be talked about using different art mediums. And very importantly, that it's just like how you initiate the conversation, how you initiate the dialogue, which actually gives them that space which they feel is very safe for them, and they talk about it. Thank you.
If I may just pick up on both of those points, as part of developing the framework, each school undertook an action-based research, and we then went into focus groups and talked to the teachers. We had a teacher who burst into tears saying, I have taught for 20 years and now I enjoy it. It was the most amazing moment. But to pick up on your point of making this uncertainty concrete, just a very simple example of an undertaking that we do is working with young children when there is a conflict in an area, unfortunately like Gaza Strip at the moment. That is huge to get your head around, to understand the politics and everything like that. If you have a conversation around with your grade 5 children and you say to them, how do you feel about the fact that the grade 6 students always get the sunshade at lunchtime? How do you feel about that? And they will respond that they get angry, they get frustrated, why can't it be shared? That's a conflict over territory. And so there you have a way to address what is a very complex issue. You could have a conversation about a soccer ball. The grade 6s are always hogging the soccer ball. That's a conflict over resources. So making it concrete, you can make it age appropriate and less uncertainty.
Well, thank you very much for your fascinating examples. Well, when I attended the UNESCO pre-summit last year, somebody said that teachers is important for transforming education. Everybody gave her, huge hand. But at the same time, I thought, teacher is extremely important. But at the same time, I think teachers are the problem. I'm saying this because I have been a teacher for the last 30 years. And I could say I don't know, very frankly. Well, almost at the end of the career of my teaching, I think it's extremely important to say I don't know, because teacher cannot know everything. And so I was brave enough to open a course on artificial intelligence. Well, I'm a cultural anthropologist, and what can I know about artificial intelligence? But I had some financial support from outside. I and my colleague, we opened this course. And we advertised this course, so a huge crowd appeared. And I told them, I and my colleague, we know very little about artificial intelligence. The students were shocked. But we said, well, teaching what you know, that anybody can do. I will let you realize what a university is. We are studying together. We are learning together what we do not know. I will invite so-called specialists, and we will study together. And we called the specialists. They gave a 1-hour lecture, and I and my colleague began to ask very stupid questions, very basic questions. But, well I said stupid, but I don't know I know very little about artificial intelligence, but I'm not actually that stupid. I have a PhD degree in another field, so I consider myself a little bit smart. But because we do not know, we have to ask these questions. And that made, I think, tremendous difference, because, these smart kids, university kids, they always try to ask smart questions. They do not really ask what they really want to know, what they are really curious about, what they really suspect. So the course turned out to be a terrific success. But I think it's very important for the teachers to acknowledge that the extent of their knowledge and competence, and work together with the students, because this is information age. There are books and lectures and all this data on the internet. So the role of the teachers should change. And the teachers should not feel threatened about this progress of knowledge. We can work together always. I think time is really up, so I will end this session with a little advertisement. This conference is amazing. We are talking about transformative education, or transforming education, or transformative learning. Right? We are focused on global citizenship education. And I learned that in the morning, Mr. Kessel mentioned in his welcoming speech that global citizenship education is at the core of this transformative education. Is that correct? Yeah. So I thought the UNESCO published a report in the last conference, this Reimagining Our Futures Together. And this is full of interesting, fascinating ideas and visions. And also there's a tremendous importance about the global citizenship education, how we have to rethink our schools and how we have to bring together higher education and lifelong education, and how we have to emphasize global citizenship education in lifelong education. So I talked with the Minister of Education, and I'm talking with the head of this APSEU so that we can hold a meeting, international meeting, next year after the United Nations Transformative Education Summit to start a serious international meeting about how to implement the ideas and visions in the UNESCO report, and how to put global citizenship education really at the center of this huge effort. So I ask you to give support and show interest and participate in this challenging endeavor. Right. With that, I think time is up, and dinner is waiting. So if there's anybody who has to say something now, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll go to dinner. Okay, so we'll go to dinner. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.